Welcome to Belling History with the Good Time Girls, a hyper-local podcast about the quirky history of Bellingham, Washington, and the fourth corner of the United States. Even though we like to keep things close to home, these stories are no less entertaining to the masses and those who find themselves, unfortunately, outside of the PNW. We are your hosts. I'm Ren.
And I'm Colby. And we are known here in Bellingham as the Good Time Girls for our tour business, serving up hot Belling history since 2011. Today's episode is called Bellinghamsters and Other Tales, Animal Stories with the Good Time Girls.
Or firefighters are a brave, unruly, and maybe a little bored bunch.
So this was actually a run-through for a live talk we did last month at the Whatcom Museum. We decided to record our practice run-through and release it as a podcast episode because we're multitasking like that.
We like to reach the masses. Bear in mind, as you listen, we reference some images that we'd be showing on the big giant screen during our live talk, and we're going to put those on our blog with our show notes if you want to take a look. But without further ado, here's the episode. Well, in case you guys hadn't gotten the memo this year, the Whatcom Museum will be offering free admission on the first Friday of the month with extended hours until 9 p.m. And that includes special free programming as part of our city's long-running First Friday Art Walk. So we're really proud and excited to be included in this endeavor, as it is also our goal to get more of Bellingham citizens involved and invested in our history. And there has really never been a better place to start in Bellingham than the big red building, the old City Hall.
It is the iconic...
It's iconic.
It's Bellingham.
It is
Belling history right here.
History. So, podcast listeners, I don't know if you guys made it in to see the pets exhibit at the museum in February, but tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that wonderful exhibit curated by archive extraordinaire Jeff Jewell. And we ran with it to include animal stories of Bellingham history, of the wholesome and maybe less wholesome nature.
I know.
Because we can't have nice things, as you guys will surely be aware.
They invited us to talk, and I was like, what do you want us to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
We have some stories about animals.
We do.
So the pet show has been up since October, and it will remain up through April 14th. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It features heartwarming images of domestic companions, all from the Whatcom Museum's photo archives. So there is a cute digital display where you can add photos of your pets.
I want to see all the babies. We Good Time Gals are also animal lovers. We have many pets between us, between Colby and I and our other guides, Andra, Sarah, Asia. So we wanted to just do a little minute where we introduce you to the Good Time pets. We can include these photos in our little blog along with the bios of each pet. You guys won't want to miss that. But anyway, so here's just a cute, quick little introduction, but most importantly, Colby and I want to dedicate this talk to Riggs, who is one of the best boys to ever walk the earth. Sarah's beloved fluffball. We love you, buddy. We know you're rolling in endless snow and keeping a good eye on your people from up there. And then we have Boomer and Rambo, who are fucking icons of the Good Time Girls. Boomer, the camping cat, and Rambo, just the puppy who... he's got to fit in or ship out because Boomer
adorable.
will put him in his place. The cutest. We have Rosie. We have Colby's cat. If you hadn't guessed it.
I'm
Colby's
the crazy cat lady.
Colby's cat lady.
I know, it's surprising.
Colby is our cat lady. And then my beautiful, adorable angels, Cecil and Henry. Cecil's the one with the underbite. All right.
Sure, so funny.
Okay, so now that you've indulged us long enough on our little fur babies, go ahead, Colby.
All right. So being a history nerd and looking at the pet exhibit and thinking about how much we love and adore our pets today got me thinking about sort of cultural trends and the concepts of pets and pet ownerships over time. So in the not so distant past, keeping an animal as a pet was kind of often seen as a luxury in most places and times. Most animals that lived among us were expected to, quote, earn their keep or be eaten. So farm animals, a more common, prevalent part of people's lives in days of yore. And even dogs and cats, the staples of the pet world, were kept around for mostly utilitarian purposes, providing security on the one hand and catching rats. Yep. Respectively. So keeping an animal indoors was kind of seen as frivolous, but it also conveyed status and wealth. So if you had a pampered little pet that you kept as your lap dog, that was like sort of a richy hoity-toity thing. Mm-hmm. But animals, like women and children, were seen as property of a man, and what a man did with his property was his concern.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yeah.
So, thus we have early humane societies, which were actually just charity groups that actually advocated for the humane treatment of both animals and humans.
Of things, yeah.
Especially children.
Yeah.
But the poor, the underdogs of all kinds, pun intended.
Oh, jeez.
So, the plight of animals in urban and industrial settings, not to mention children and women. But yes, this plight was real. Many working animals lived in less than ideal conditions. Think of the days of delivery wagons. You had a lot of working horses. If your business wasn't doing well, caring for your horses properly could be difficult. Dogs and cats pretty much roamed freely. There was no spaying and neutering, so controlling those populations became a necessity. And that was pretty ugly. Pretty rough in terms of what we would consider humane today.
Right. No Bob Barker. No spaying and neutering.
Nope. We had the rise of the automobile, so working animals, especially horses, are phased out, literally put out to pasture. Right. And that sort of urban and rural divide becomes sharper. Around the mid-19th century, you get increasing ideas about pet ownership as being character building for children, especially. This is a picture of my uncle, Terry, as a child with their dog, Frisky.
Oh, what?
Circa 1940, late 40s.
Frisky.
So around this time. So you get modern advances in parasite control, antibiotics, all that enabling people and animals to live together in closer proximity, better than ever before. You get new consumer products like cat litter. First marketed in 1947.
Amazing. Boomers.
Right? So you also saw animal rights advocacy kind of changing over time from the prevention of just suffering and cruelty to animals to more like civil rights era animal liberation.
Right.
So things definitely have changed over time. Just bear all this in mind while we tell you these stories about pets and other critters that sometimes might shock our modern sensibilities a little bit. Times have changed.
For sure.
So, something that remains true today, the lines between domesticated pets and wild animals could sometimes get a little blurry. Mm-hmm. So we've got our Tiger Kings and our Carol Baskins of the world. But in the past, it was like, people just seem to be adopting wild animals that they came in contact with. Like, in nature.
Well, you just found it on your doorstep.
So I mean, that seemed to be more of a thing than maybe happens today, but
understandably.
Yeah. So let's talk about Bellinghaminals.
The Bellinghaminals. And first of all, we need to talk about
the obvious.
Bellinghamsters. This is not a critter you walked out on your doorstep to find. They weren't picked up quite so easily, which is funny because we use their name frequently when referring to our local
I call
citizens.
Myself a Bellinghamster.
I am a proud Bellinghamster.
No Bellinghamite.
No. Ew. Gross.
Bellinghamian.
No. How's that roll off the tongue? And also, our Bellingham Build mascot would probably be a whole lot less cute if not for the hamster. What would we call ourselves?
Shout out to Dinger.
Yeah, good old Dinger. Just a little aside. Did y'all know our baseball team's mascot Dinger? And we may or may not have inspired this meeting of the rodents.
Do you remember when we were at the Dirty Dance Festival?
Gosh darn proud.
And I was like, we need a Dinger versus Wally.
Yep.
Wrestling match.
We came up with that.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite a wrestling match.
It wasn't right.
But it
wasn't the down and dirty bout that the Good Time Girls are used to. But Dinger and Wally,
Together at last.
Love it. They played a cute little t-ball game in the courtyard over at the museum. But just seeing those two little rivals, rodent rivals come together for the children was amazing. So, but anyway, let's talk for a minute about mascots, Wally included and Dinger, which are often animals, as you guys all know. There's some weird outliers, but mostly we're animals.
Well, nowadays it's mostly people in costumes, and that can really be anything.
Exactly. So, but I still
like your sports teams.
No, but I like an animal mascot.
Yeah,
I prefer that
not a Viking.
to the weird monster guys.
Yeah.
I'm not into sports ball. So
Sorry.
I don't remember, but I know there's some weird. But I like an animal mascot. And that's really, pertinent to what we're talking about. Fun fact, the word mascot originates from the French term mascotte. God. Nope, that's not it. But anyway.
Mascot.
No, I like it.
Just say mascot. It with a nasal.
Mascot. Yeah, you gotta have a little thing on the end, right?
We should probably look up.
No, I like it. Anyway, the word in French, maybe you guys can chime in. It means lucky charm, which I love. I think that's lovely. It was used to describe anything that brought luck to a household. And the word was first recorded in 1867. So not even a whole long time ago either. But now today, a lot of mascots are actually people inside of the costume, right? Rather than actual animals, which was more common in the past. We had actual mascots, little animal, living, breathing mascots. And of course, a mouse would be historically accurate for the museum mascot, which we'll talk about later. But I feel like cats might be the better, like the winner. Yeah, you know what I mean?
It really should have been.
But there were probably plenty of mice here, and
the cats were there for a reason.
The cats were there for a reason. They had to be here because
or the
of
rats.
Wally. Back to the hamster. The truth is, the term Bellinghamster wouldn't be officially used until circa 1970s, it seems. The first use of the term Bellinghamster we could find in the newspaper was 1973, when the Herald published this photograph of a mailbox at 1130. We're doxing these people now. 1133 21st Street.
We don't understand this.
The caption is wild, y'all, so you need to hear it. It says, "Is a Bellinghamster a resident of Bellingham? Or is that a Bellinghamite? Or is it just a furry four-legged rodent with a penchant for magazine subscriptions? Best answer wins. Maybe a head or two of lettuce." Also, it's captioned the cookie mole.
We don't know what a cookie mole is.
This is not from the same cookie mole, which was very misleading and sent us down a rabbit hole, which didn't end anywhere.
No, we don't.
It was a very short rabbit hole.
We don't know what the cookie mole is.
We tried to find it. So yeah, if you have any idea of what they may or may not be referring to, that would be great to hear. Yeah, and then a head or two of lettuce. And I don't really think that the hamsters love lettuce, but I'm just gonna, that's my fourth grade knowledge of hamster ownership. Anyway, it seems whomever inhabited this campus adjacent home was kind of ahead of their time, because this is our first little known Bellinghamster.
I presume that the phrase was being used before this. It's just the earliest, time it was printed in the Herald that we could find.
Sure.
With a keyword search.
Sure. There's that. And then we have Cam Clark, pictured here. He wasn't far behind the trend in 1979 with his furry Valentine named Bellinghamster. We call him Hammy. But here's what Cam had to say about his Bellinghamster. He said, "He's special because he's quiet, doesn't need to go for a walk in the cold early morning, and won't steal from the stash of peanut butter cookies under my bed." So, anyway.
Only because he's in a cage, Cam.
Yeah, exactly. Because you've caged a wild rodent. So speaking of, where did he come from? Hamsters hail from Syria originally, and hamsters were brought to the U.S. from Syria in 1938, but it took a good decade after that for them to make their debut in Washington State, as in this fun little article here in 1947 about Mr. and Mrs. O.P. Taylor, who were, quote, credited in the newspaper with having started a new animal husbandry industry with the critters, who could multiply like calculators. They started with 3 hamsters, and those spawned more than 100 descendants. So there were a lot of inbred hamsters in Washington, probably to this day. They started breeding them as lab rat substitutes, but found that they could also be marketed as pets. And then soon after, we had the hamsters here in the ham, and we found a bunch of one ads. We found hamsters being advertised in the newspaper in 1948. not one, but 2 want ads. Miniature teddy bears. That's the kind I had. I had a teddy bear hamster.
I think that's the quintessential
They're
breed.
fluffy little guys. They're so cute. $1 a piece. 1 free male with every 3 females. So they're encouraging you to breed the hamsters, which seems a little...
Get in on the ground floor. Make some money on this hamster racket.
The scientific world needs you. And then there were golden hamsters. That, I think, is the more quintessential.
Oh,
they're kind
okay.
of the
So we've got
tan.
competing hamster breeds already?
That's true.
It didn't even occur to me.
Capitalism is alive and well,
Yes.
as you know. Golden hamsters, the tiny new wonder animal from Syria, often called toy bears.
Okay.
They're delightful pets, it says. So in the pet exhibit, you may have seen photos of one of the pioneer Bellinghamsters from 1949. Featured in the exhibit is a photo of Lynn Hutchinson, a senior at BHS, shown holding a hamster owned by Jerry Blankenship from 1949. This was printed in the Herald, and they had to specify in the caption, "It's not a mouse!" Because most people had no clue what this little guy was. And they had to explain it was a short-tailed rodent belonging to the mouse tribe. And then there's a fun little quote. It says, "The hamster is kept in a bird cage and is most lively at night and gets a bit peeved when handled too much or tormented and won't eat in public." I mean, can you blame the little guy?
I feel the same.
It's for real.
So, before we had jokes about Bellinghamsters, we had Cow Bellingham.
This one blows my mind. But you know what? I didn't fully understand that for a minute, and then I had to be like, cowbell.
Cowbell.
Ingham.
Exactly.
It took me
when
a
you
minute,
write it out like
but
that.
I kind of like it.
It's a thing. We've always liked to make puns from animals for the name of our city. So, since there were no hamsters prior to the mid-century and a lot more cows, you can see this is logical.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I like it.
You may have heard or seen the story, one of the first orders of business undertaken by the Whatcom City Council right here in this very building after its completion in 1893 involved cows. So this was before Bellingham existed as a city. We had the rival towns of Whatcom and Fairhaven on Bellingham Bay. Quick refresher for those that don't know, construction on this building began in 1892 as the city hall for the town of New Whatcom, who were trying to look fancy like Fairhaven over there with their new hotel. So the hall was officially opened in 1893, but it was in the midst of a nationwide economic depression, so the building was still unfinished at the time. But, you know, they had business to do. And among other business, one of the first items was the council voted to ban cows from roaming the streets between 7:30 p.m. and 6 a.m., which apparently was a hot button issue because it was written about a lot in the paper, and not just the Bellingham paper. Papers reported, and I quote, "That famous cow ordinance, which recently passed, is causing much uneasiness among the suburban denizens." So they say, "Ex-Mayor W.L. Miller has become thoroughly initiated into the intricacies of the ordinance. Tuesday night, his erring cow roamed at will in the streets until the alert pound keeper caught her and placed her in confinement according to law. The ex-mayor awoke the next morning to find that the bovine had been placed in the toils."
It's so dramatic.
It gets better.
Baby.
"Early morning wrath is usually the most unreasonable. And it was so in Mr. Miller's case. He grabbed an axe and went to the pound, smashed a big hole in the fence, and let his cow out of the Bastille in triumph. A warrant was at once sworn out for the arrest of the offender, and he was brought before the police court." So this is the ex-mayor, the recent mayor. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of
the former mayor, but he was still well known.
So he's our first arrested on the cow ordinance for axing his cow out of the pen. But he was acquitted by a jury. So then, fast forward, 1903, 10 years later, Bellingham is born. Yay. When the rival towns of New Whatcom and Fairhaven voted to consolidate, Bellingham was born amid clanging of bells. Yep. Naturally, they picked the name Bellingham, which was already the name of the bay, because that was a nice neutral name. Whatcom wanted Whatcom, Fairhaven wanted Fairhaven. Nobody could agree. But they settled on Bellingham, and not everybody was happy with that idea. There were various proposals, some more serious than others. A favorite suggestion of ours is the mashup of Whatcom and Fairhaven, Whathaven. But on January of 1905, a self-described, quote, somewhat cowed, but still bellicose citizen wrote this to the Herald in the form of a letter. So, from communications, which occasionally appear in the columns of our local dailies, it would seem that some of our citizens are still dissatisfied with the name which the city at present bears. Bellingham. If it be advisable to add one more to the long list of appellations under which our community has labored in the past, and which exceed in number the aliases of many a famous crook or the surnames of certain much-wedded Chicago ladies. So he's saying that Bellingham has had a lot of names, like crooks have aliases, and like those crazy dames of Chicago who keep getting married.
Okay.
Okay. And he goes on, then I would suggest that the addition of a prefix of a single syllable to the title we now enjoy would give us a name at once euphonious and appropriate. Cow Bellingham.
Cowbell.
Cowbell, get
Ingham. Okay, it keeps going,
The
though.
bellicose citizen continues. I make this suggestion on behalf of the residents of all but the central part of our city, the pleasure of whose days, as well as the restfulness of their nights, is greatly enhanced by the constant clangor of discordant bells suspended from the necks of vagabond bovines. Did you get that?
Yeah, I did, and I love it. Every minute of it.
Cowbells. There's a lot of cowbells running around.
They're all running around
noisy.
so they can find their bells and they just wander through people's fucking yards at
and
night.
You can't sleep, damn it. You think the downtown noise is bad and the shipping containers and things.
Yeah,
and
the trains going by, nothing
and
compared to the vagabond bovines.
Yes. So he says, okay, here we go. If our council and city officials are desirous of exemplifying our much boasted spirit of thrift and progressiveness by allowing this pleasant feature of our community life to continue indefinitely, the proposed change in name cannot fail to meet with their approval.
I love it.
This is the
so snarky.
Letter.
Just the bitchiest. Right. I love it.
So in plain talk, this person is mad about the wayward cows roaming freely about with their noisy cowbells and are thus snarkily suggesting the name of the town be changed to Cow Bellingham.
I like it. I think, you know what? Passive-aggressive humor is my way of dealing with everything in my life. So this person has my heart.
And the vocabulary is...
And also, I would not hate to have a sweet little cow ring-a-ding
cling-a-ding-a-dong
eating the grass outside my window.
A cowbell. Remind me, I'm going to bring it. Yeah, so what do you guys think? I mean, this was apparently a hazard of living anywhere but in the very center of the city where the cows were prohibited from
finally
roaming.
Prohibited, but...
Probably for this very reason.
So fucking cute.
But what do you think? Cow Bellingham. It's got a nice ring.
No, I like it. Okay. But for me, I literally can't get beyond it. It has to be Cowbell Ingham.
Emphasize that.
Emphasize that so people...
So the moral of this whole story is that prior to the 1940s, cows were a bigger part of life in Bellingham than hamsters. Here we are. What could be next? Belling hammerhead shark, maybe.
Right, we're gonna have
global warming.
That's exactly right. I was gonna go with that. Climate's gonna have to get a little warmer. But you know what? The historians of future are gonna look back on this podcast and be like,
okay.
Damn, those girls, they were onto something. Okay, switching gears. Back to cats. One of the oldest animal stories we have around here comes to us from Fairhaven, and that's the legend of the Fairhaven cats.
Yeah, and we did talk about this in our Halloween episode, and I also feel like we could do a whole episode deep dive into this story.
I would love to.
Man, there's some good...
Oh, man.
There's some good stuff.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I wish I were around to see them. Colby was around to see them.
Yes.
And so we've heard tales of... Pun intended. But, okay, so is anybody... Okay, listeners, if you've been to the Black Cat in Fairhaven, a.k.a. Le Chat Noir... then you will have been witnessed a tiny bit of the history of the Black Cats in Fairhaven. The lore, the legend.
It's a Bellingham classic.
It is a Bellingham classic. There was a time, and it wasn't a terribly long time ago, in the 80s. It was, exactly. There was a time long ago when Colby was a teenager, and... in the 80s and 90s when like there was a whole very big feral cat population in Fairhaven, and a lot of them were black, as I hear. So we do discuss this on our tours, so maybe you've heard it there, or we have a Halloween special podcast episode, plug. But as Colby said, we might just do a whole damn deep dive, because I love this story. Who doesn't love this story? So anyway, just a little brief tidbit. Back in the late 1900s, 70s, 80s, 90s, Fairhaven was a different place. Most of the old buildings were half empty and boarded over. So we're talking 1980s, 90s. You guys, if you want to hear more about the rise, the fall, the rise again of Fairhaven, you have to come on our tours.
I know.
But
I don't know about you, but I really got pleasure in saying the late 1900s. And I'm just going to go around saying that from now on. Please be patient with me because I'm from the 1900s.
A friend of mine at work who is a young man, and he is the most adorable, and I love him very much. Shout out to Elijah. But he is, God Jesus, a Gen Z.
What are they now?
He's a Gen Z, 20-something years old, and when we say how old we are, he's like, you were born in the 1900s?
Oh, God.
As a very funny joke. He thinks it's hilarious. I also think it's hilarious.
I do.
But
I'm
it is
leaning
also
in.
kind of, I like it. Let's lean in, y'all. But so it wasn't very long ago that Fairhaven was a very different place than you guys all know it today. If you're newer to the town, most of the beautiful brick buildings that you see down there were half empty or boarded over, being squatted in. There were a lot of weed-filled vacant lots, even up until the 90s, 2000s when I got here. And roaming around were a lot of feral cats known as the Fairhaven cats. They were not friendly. They were indeed. So they're wild, but many of the restaurants, they would put out food for the cats, and for years they proliferated and were just kind of a feature of Fairhaven. But anyway, there was a local legend about the origin story of the Fairhaven cats. They were said to be the descendants of the felines of the Consolidated Black Cat Company, a cat ranch rumored to have been organized by Jim Wardner in the 1890s, so 100 years prior, on Eliza Island, out in the San Juans. Jim Wardner was a capitalist who came to Fairhaven during the boom years of the 1890s, built a fancy mansion up on the hill. The mansion was referred to by locals as Wardner's Castle. It's on the corner of Knox and 15th Street, and it's considered one of the most haunted houses in town. But you'll have to go on a tour to hear a little bit more about them. But the cat ranch story appears in newspapers syndicated nationwide in 1891 after Jim Wardner gave an interview detailing this black cat consolidated company that was supposedly being started by wealthy men in Fairhaven. And they were reportedly looking to purchase an island on which to breed black cats for their fur. The island that has come to be associated with this venture is Eliza Island. Wardner discussed how salmon were plentiful and predators non-existent. He planned to sell the cat's fur as knockoff seal fur and expected to make a lucrative profit. The story picked up a life of its own, with reports of carloads of cats being shipped and reports of the cat's luxurious life on the island. Some thought it was a brilliant idea. Others thought it was horrible and inhumane. Ultimately, though, there is zero historical evidence, right, that the cat farm ever existed. And a lot of the evidence that Wardner was the type to BS and make a very big nationwide joke of our little neck of the woods. But I love it. He did, though, never deny the story.
I know. He included a little chapter. He wrote his own biography. There's a chapter on My Black Cat Ranch where it's very cheeky and like wink wink, but he still doesn't deny it.
I don't know. I fucking love it. I do kind of like your black cat story. Anyway, those Fairhaven cats were said to be the descendants of this fictitious cat ranch. But plans to trap and socialize these feral, mean-ass cats were made in 1988 by a group calling themselves the Kitty Committee. Anyway, any of you in the audience were maybe part of the Kitty Committee, please, we want to hear your stories. So they kind of rounded them up and, we spayed and neutered, so everything
I have
is
heard
going
a rumor
swimmingly.
that there's, there were a few around, or there was at least one person that still had.
A descendant?
I don't know if it have to be a second generation or third, but who knows?
If these are the descendants of the Black Cat, right? Like, how did they get here? Did they
They swam for their little lives.
kitty paddles
Jumped
across
on a
the
boat.
bay? Jumped on the boat.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the story. And so the black cat is named after those legendary cats of Fairhaven. But we had dogs. We had dogs too. We can't have cats without feral cats without feral dogs.
I know. I found a cute story or two about Fairhaven dogs. I don't know how cute they are. I thought they were cute. They're kind of crusty. But you could see like this lovely historical marker down along Fairhaven's waterfront commemorating of the disposal of dogs of yore.
Cool.
It says, drowning pool, dogs only.
So there was one specifically for humans.
Cats had to be in a separate pool. I don't know.
Hamsters are in another, a much smaller pool.
I'm not sure. I think they were talking about like large animal carcasses, which I've legit seen. I went to a dump in New Mexico, and the dump actually had a sign that said "No large animal carcasses," and I was like, "Oh, that's an issue here." Wow.
I, as a history lover, am often like, which era would I live in if I could go back in time? I'm in the perfect era. I can't handle a dog drowning pool. Thank you. I'm good. I lost
my spot. Okay. So, dogs. So, they had a lot of stray dogs running around, apparently. Yep. It was a problem, and they would multiply, because no spaying and neutering, and they were causing havoc and were kind of an issue. So in 1890, the Fairhaven Herald reported that the city was being overrun with dogs, which had no license and were without owners. Mm. You know, you had to have tags and a license and all this. And if a dog get caught without tags, it would be taken to the pound. And at first it was only kept for 24 hours before it was killed. But then they extended that grace period to 4 whole days. So apparently there was one dog, though, that everyone loved, and whom apparently they loved it because it chased off all the other stray dogs from the city and all the area.
Feral dogs. Yeah. These aren't just like cute little stray dogs. They're scary guys. Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. I can't even imagine.
So this guy was like a hero.
Yeah. So this dog is called Old Bum. Cutest name. So I found a story from 1894, and it was about, quote, Fairhaven's historic dog. So it's considered historic in 1894. I'm not sure why.
This town's been around for a good
I think
30
historic
years.
As in like he's legendary.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the historic features of Fairhaven is Old Bum, who has won an enviable reputation in the city for pluck and perseverance, and bears the proud distinction of having come off victorious in all encounters with other dogs. So he's fighting them off. Champion Old Bum.
Yeah.
So a historic sketch of Old Bum was written and stated that he originally had belonged to a man in Skagit County, name of Klein, old Kleiny, if you know him.
Yeah, if you know him, let us know.
But circa 1889, apparently a tree fell on the dog, breaking his leg. And he was able to get about again. It wasn't clear if he was it amputated or was it just gimpy? I don't know. But we have a 3-legged dog here. That's actually the Alice in Chains CD cover. Looks like an old bum.
Just a little Colby insert.
Trying to find a Google image of a 3-legged old bum dog, you know.
I think Bum would be proud.
Yeah. So he's put on the train to Fairhaven. They just say that. Why? Just a dog.
I know.
Anyway, sent to Fairhaven. Okay, bye. So he's there now.
Maybe he was sent to get his leg taken care of by a really nice little veterinarian.
Yeah, maybe.
And then he was like, this is the place that saved me.
Yeah.
And he went on a mission to protect all of Fairhaven. Yeah.
So city council voted him. They voted him a collar and the freedom of the city. Oh. So they were like, this dog, this stray, gimpy dog can stay. He gets a free collar. Yeah. Freedom to roam.
Because he's a good boy.
Yeah. So since that time, as they said, since which time he has fought his way into the hearts of all the residents by doing up every strange cur that has made its appearance to dispute his right to the throne. They're into dog fights, basically, and Old Bum was the champion.
Well, also, they were probably terrorized by these little shits.
They were unfriendly dogs running around. That could be scary, including
stealing food and
people's actual dogs. I mean, dogs were mostly security. That's why you would have a dog.
Right.
So it was kind of a good thing to have a dog that was a little mean to keep people away from
and
your
protect
stuff.
your cows and your anything.
So speaking of that, here's a photo we're showing here of the Monogram Saloon in Fairhaven, whose proprietor is named Sam Swanson. Not sure which one he is, assuming he might be the guy holding one of the dogs. There's 2 dogs in the photo. But one of Sam Swanson's dogs we know was acquitted in the police course on the charge of viciousness.
Oh, shit.
So we don't have any details about what happened.
Must have killed something.
But it ended up in court. They did acquit the dog, so maybe it was self-defense or something. I don't know. But I do. Yeah. Sam Swanson's saloon was at 400 Harris Avenue, way down at the foot near the waterfront.
By the water, yeah.
And past the drowning pool. But according to the 1900 census, Sam Swanson, saloon keeper, employed a 19-year-old woman as a waitress. And then in parentheses is written, sporting woman. Y'all know what that means? Better come on one of our tours.
Yeah.
Anyway, when Sam Swanson passed away in 1912 at age 44, he was called one of the oldest and best-known pioneers of the city.
Ah.
R.I.P. Sam Swanson and your dogs.
And your doggies.
Yeah. Anyway, let's head back to this side of town.
Yeah, this side of town and this exact piece of property that we're sitting at back to the City Hall cats. There are many of them. We have stories, but we're going to stick to this really nice, wholesome, sweet one. In 1909, Charlie Bornstein was the janitor at City Hall, and in October of that year, he rescued a kitten from the furnace. And we have a nice little article that stated, Charlie Bornstein, the janitor comedian of the City Hall, plunges into firebox and drags mite of catdom from burning shavings. Hair singed, but Kitty is unharmed, so they say. Rushing in, bald-headed, where the average person would fear to tread, Charlie Bornstein, janitor-comedian, again, of the City Hall, early this week effected a thrilling rescue of a weeny-teeny kitten that had accidentally found itself in the big ash box underneath the heating boiler. Until a few days ago, it has not been considered necessary to build a fire in the furnace at the City Hall to heat up the rooms. For several weeks, the boiler has been cold, and therefore the big ash pan beneath has been a receptacle of rubbish. An immense pile of shavings in the pan afforded a nice cozy home for the municipal rat catcher, which has kept the City Hall clear of rodents. The other day, Bornstein lighted a match, touched it to the shavings, and soon had a roaring fire. The boiler began to sizzle, and Charlie leaned back in his chair, complacent in the knowledge that oxygen and wood would do the rest. He was about to lapse into a woozy little snooze all by himself when he heard a squeaky meow that undoubtedly came from the firebox. Charlie is filled with the milk of human kindness. Accordingly, he ran his fingers through his hair, leaped toward the firebox, throwing the burning shavings to the farther end of the box, unearthed the baby cat, which had been left there by its mother. He scrambled out of the place with the flames shooting up around him and, puffing but triumphant, deposited the mite of felinity in a safe place. His hair was singed, but otherwise he was not burned. Bornstein is now the best friend the mother cat has had at the City Hall. Bornstein was led to the third story of the building the other day by the mother of the rescued, squeaky-voiced little feline, and there he saw not only the one he had taken from the firebox, but the other tiny one that jealously spat and psst at him. Newspapers.
That was actually a condensed version. Like, I cut so much out of it.
I like it, though.
I know. The wording is just so...
It's so lovely and so well written. And Charlie seems like a real gem. So a little bit about Charlie. He was born in Boston in 1849. His family moved to California. They arrived in Bellingham Bay in 1892. Charlie and his wife Annie were the parents of 9 children. Their youngest son, Meyer Bornstein, would become known around here for the seafood company bearing their name. In his early days, Charlie was a volunteer firefighter, and in his later years became the janitor here at City Hall. And we got some really great quotes here. Charlie, as they called him, Charlie Bornstein, is about as well known and as favorably as any man in Bellingham. And then another one, Charlie knows how to operate every layer in the City Hall from the concrete basement to the point of the flagstaff. He plays the role of clown for the city officials and reporters, feeds hapless kitties, tells true fishing yarns, and sweeps and dusts the mayor's office and likes it. And then we assume by calling him the goat, they mean the scapegoat, and he is kind of known for his ability to take the gaff or like kind of just play it off and be funny. If anything funny happens, quote unquote, Charlie has to stand for it. And Charlie, an agreeable and obliging chap, rises to the occasion. And I love him. And we have some pictures here. Yeah. He's a short little guy, but very beloved. Back to the cats anyway. There was the mother, and then apparently Apparently there were several kittens. Sadly, all of them but one had died within the few months. The one that had lived was then joined by another stray kitten who just kind of wandered in and befriended the remaining Firebugs rescue kittens. And apparently they both like to hang out in the mayor's office and play on the new rug. And the paper reported in February of 1910, cats settle down in mayor's office, attracted by the mouse-like windings that constitute the figures on the new Brussels carpet in the mayor's office. The last one of the city hall's cats were the guest of Mayor de Matos and basked in the steam radiator that hissed and spluttered during the meeting of the water board. The Maltese kitty is one of those which were rescued from the firebox recently by janitor Charlie Bornstein. There were 4 when Charlie effected his thrilling rescue, but all the rest of the tribe has departed to cat heaven. But the mayor was said to be enjoying the presence of the kitties, but Charlie Bornstein was reported to be a little bummed that his little buddies had deserted him for the mayor's warm, cuddly office.
I know. I think Charlie probably mostly hung out in the basement.
Yeah.
A lot. Where
janitor.
Like, he's a janitor.
Doing
but
janitor
also,
stuff.
What's in the basement? Have you guys been down there to the jail? The jail was in the basement, and it's pretty cool if you get to go down there and see all the padded cell and all the good stuff. But the basement was home also to several police cats.
Oh man, if there's anywhere you need a cat, it's the basement
yeah.
of that. Like right on the bay by the dump. Holy moly, yeah.
So fast forward in 1922, the Herald reported there was a black cat called Bill that decided...
Bill!
Bill the cat.
William.
Just like, what was that? It was in a comic. Bloom County. Anyway, I'll edit that out.
Whoa, all right.
It's an old one from the 80s. Anyway, Bill the cat.
From the 1900s.
Old people will remember that one. So Bill decided to make the police station the home and was an accepted member of the city official family. And I love that there was an article that Bill had reportedly joined the police on the, quote, night shift when Chief Andy Williams had started a new prowling squad whose job it was to comb the alleys at night.
Oh, yes.
Cat puns.
Okay.
Yay. So they said, quote, Bill does not carry a star, but no one who has come in contact with Bill's claws doubts the police cat's authority. A year later, sadly, Bill reportedly met a sudden death.
Oh, no.
And he was replaced by Pete. Peter,
okay, Peter
was as, quote, yellow as Bill was black. And Pete liked to curl up under the sergeant's desk counter, and the officers were given strict instructions to leave Peter to his own private meditations. Love it. I love that.
I really love that.
Yes. So next we're going to tell you about some of the mascots of the fire department, which is probably our favorite stories, including our lovely building right next door, Old Station 1, which is now home to the Syree Center, and the photo archives. Shout out to Jeff Jewell. Thanks for all the pictures.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fire station mascots. So first and foremost, the firemen had their horses, which in the early days, essential, getting them to the fire as swiftly as possible. They loved their horses. They gave them names. The horses were retired in 1916.
That's a big deal. That's telling.
Yeah.
That's funny, yeah.
So they phased them out slowly between around 1910 and 1916 when the automobiles were coming on the scene and they were getting fancy new fire trucks. But you'll see a lot of these old photos with the horses. They also had the dogs. Classic. I've not found a Dalmatian, but several other dogs. We're not sure which dog or dogs are pictured here, but circa 1905, there are a lot of stories about Bob. Love that there was Bill the cat and Bob the dog. But Bob was described as ochre-colored. He was the best-known dog in the city, who was also first at every fire. Aww. And it said, if the dog is on the street, he will make a beeline for the fire hall at the first tap of the bell.
Oh, so he's just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. Running around.
Comes back.
He's like, time for a fire. I'm with you. I'm going.
Shit.
So he made the news a few times, however, when he, quote, forgot his good breeding and was getting into fights with other dogs.
Yeah.
As we've dog
learned,
fights are common.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I hate
so there
that.
was also Pat, an Airedale Terrier, and Trixie, a combination bull and fox terrier. And both of those were from Prospect Street Station. Trixie was last while hunting near Laurel in 1913.
Aww.
We also had Rex here. A nice photo of Rex from over on the South Side Fire Station over in Fairhaven, where he was known to have a magical calming effect on the high-strung horses.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So the fire department also had a few fire cats, like a black cat appropriately named Smokey in 1910, and more recently Metro, which I'll come back to him in a little bit.
He deserves his place.
But let's talk about some of their, shall we say, more ambitious mascots. Ren, what would you say?
The best ones.
So, first of all, in 1909, they really had a penchant for the wild critters, and they tried to take on a baby seal in 1909, which only lasted 1 day before dying in captivity.
Shocking.
But reportedly, I love that they said they had been longing for a seal mascot for some time. And I'm like, were they?
I hate that.
Were they like, what we really need around here is a seal?
Yeah, you think you guys are good?
For years.
Well, we got all the hoses.
Pining for a seal. Okay, whatever. Okay. But so they had planned a large tank for the seal that was going to sport about in there. And they were going to train it like a circus seal. But the poor seal is a baby. And they're like, it was just continuously trying to like find its milk. Needed salt water. Needed the
salt water. There's the other.
Yeah. So they're sad that such a fine mascot should die when hardly within their grasp.
Oh, Lord. Oh, sorry for the seal.
Yeah.
And in 1913, but a few years later, they had Teddy Rump, possibly one of the more famous of their mascots, a black bear. And the seal was probably the most docile of the animals that they had. And when they took on Teddy Rump the following couple of years, it was not, surprisingly, we learned in this research, it was not uncommon for people to take in and try to raise black bears in those early days. And the fire station would have been kind of this proto-wildlife control entity taking on random things. But bears saw many different fates brushing up so closely with humans, right? There was not uncommon for businesses to display bears in cages out front. There was even a bear pit at the popular White City amusement park of Lake Whatcom. And for those who aren't aware, a bear pit is pretty much being a big old hole in the ground where they put the bears and then they throw in food to keep them alive while we ogle them from a safe, unscalable distance. So bears were a thing. But anyway, the fire department seemed to have a penchant for bear mascots. The first we know about was named Teddy. We haven't found anything telling about how the firemen acquired this bear, but Teddy made the news a few times, as in January of 1913, and an article described how the bear felt about the new gas-powered fire truck. The fire department had acquired a new auto fire truck, one of the first non-horse-drawn vehicles, and Teddy didn't like the smell of the burning gasoline. When the chief would start up his car, Teddy would rise up on his haunches and whine. And for 5 minutes after the big red buzz wagon has gone, he will lay curled up in his corner trying to rub the smell of gasoline out of his nose. Poor Teddy. Right?
I think, and in the early days when they had both trucks and horses, I'm like, okay, this brings up so many questions because, like, what about the horses and the bear?
No, well, you know what? Compared to the big old gasoline fire truck, they probably preferred the bear. And they were used to flames and stuff, right?
The bear would, like, eat a horse.
Oh, well, yeah, no.
And maybe not a black bear, I don't know there.
Who knows? They might have kept them away. But these horses were probably badass. They were around fires and shit all the time. And feral dogs. Like, the horse or the bear on the chain was the least of their concerns, maybe? Anyway, and then we have another one in June. Teddy Rump was reported on again. Today he is sulkily concealing himself in the tall grass back of the Prospect Street firehouse, moodily cogitating upon the ethics of a tiresome conventionality. He got in a little bit of trouble. The article describes, in a very flowery manner, an incident in which the firemen awoke to find the bear snoozing in a bed in their sleeping quarters after escaping his cage. He'd apparently climbed to the second floor of the hall and climbed into bed with the genial houseman, William Reed, who had spent many a tiresome hour in a joyful romp, but nonetheless whom was startled to wake and find the bear snuggled up to him. They were putties.
No, I like that the bear's like, this is my friend.
This is my friend. I know you. And I would really like to not sleep in the cold basement anymore. Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, so Reed woke up, as you can imagine. He jumped and yelled out, turned on the light, and discovered the bear. The article also described how a chaos reigned among the blaze squelchers, who had been so rudely awakened from dreamland. But Rump did not even bat an eye. He apparently was enjoying a blissful beauty sleep on the first feather bed he had ever had the opportunity to recline upon. Their shouts did not rouse the bear. One of them resorted to throwing a shoe at the bear, who also refused to stir. Then they had to get a rope and drag the bear back out to his cage. In February of 1914, the paper also reported that Teddy Rump had made his first public appearance since December 28th, having emerged from hibernation in a hole in the ground where he had been for 50 days without food or water. Apparently, the bear had dug the hole under his house, and they described how the firemen woke him up, and he didn't sound too pleased to have been awakened. Poor Teddy. He's just trying to do his bear shit.
I'm trying to hibernate, man.
I'm trying to, do my thing. That was not nearly enough time. And by the way, you didn't feed me enough before I went to bed. So now I'm going to eat you. Just kidding. In March, an article discussed the firemen trying to teach the bear to dance in preparation for the firemen's ball. Quote, "The firemen's bear is not to be forgotten this time. The fire boys have Bruin out daily, teaching him to do the tango so that he can give a few lessons on the fine points on the new glide on the night of the ball." In July, Teddy attacked a child over a bag of peanuts. The kid was okay, but within a few weeks, Teddy was sold to a traveling showman for $50 in an article titled "Fire Boys Having Troubles with Menagerie." It also mentioned that the firemen also had a hairless rabbit and a crippled robin in their care that had been rescued by the firemen during a grass fire on Guide Meridian. But it does go on to say, the invalids occupied comfortable boxes and were under constant care. The rabbit was daily rubbed with oils and ministered to, but he died this morning notwithstanding. The bird had its legs splinted and was apparently doing all right.
Oof.
That's a lot. We're not going to unpack it all, but bless the boys.
They're trying. They're like putting out a grass fire, rescuing some critters, trying to keep them alive, I guess, for their menagerie.
They're taking care of Teddy, and he seemed pretty happy till he bit the kid.
Okay, so by November of 1914, a new animal entered the menagerie. Enter Pete the ant bear.
Yes, Pete.
Now, I did not know an anteater was called an ant bear, but now you know if you didn't, because I did not know that.
Because I didn't.
So it was actually, he's an anteater, and he escaped at one point, and pandemonium reigned on Prospect Street when the long-nosed animal capered up the street, causing women and children to scream and try to scale lamp posts before driver William Reed overpowered the ferocious beast. Poor Pete. He is...
Yeah, he's a warm weather guy.
Yeah, and he didn't like the cold. And they actually said that snow hampered his pursuit of ants. When he was, quote, called to the happy hunting ground in November of 1916, his death was diagnosed by the Bellingham Fire Department as, quote, lack of ants. R.I.P.
Okay,
Pete.
it's a little messed up. Also, though, I'd like to point out, this was not very long after Teddy Rump.
No.
Not long at all.
No, it wasn't. And
how did they get him? Did they trade?
I could not find that.
The circus guy?
It's very much a mystery, and if anyone knows the origin story of Pete, how did Pete end up in Bellingham?
Birds and bears.
Where did Pete come from?
No, there's not any anteaters around here. But also, would like to point out that 3 years for an anteater in Bellingham is actually kind of...
Gave it the college
impressive.
try.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Okay, Pete was survived by Peggy, another bear, an actual bear, not an ant bear. This was a bear cub who they said had rivaled him in the affection of the department for a few months. So they were overlapping there for a time.
Oh.
So they had this cub. We don't have any other information about Peggy, but I did find in 1917 the police were called to the 2200 block of Victor Street when a bear, just randomly owned by a homeowner in that neighborhood, broke his chain and proceeded to climb telephone poles, fruit trees, having a good time in general. And of course, the firemen were like, we'll take care of it, and brought it back to the fire station.
Yeah.
For a bit,
so the Columbia neighborhood, just having a bear roaming around.
I know. I was just like, wait. Someone just has a bear that got loose.
Yep. If he hadn't gotten loose.
So this, just to give you an
idea,
idea,
be there
there's just bears just hanging out everywhere, apparently.
Exactly.
Well, okay, fast forward, 1937, in the newspaper, the firemen announced they had a new mascot, which was a coyote pup, and they asked for the public's help in naming it.
Yeah, because we're going to keep it.
Yeah. And the name that was chosen was Keo, It's pretty cute.
Like
Keo
it.
the coyote.
Yeah.
But sadly, the firemen, once again, I don't know what happened, but they decided that the fire hall was no place for a growing coyote.
I'm guessing he ate a couple cats.
Something happens, clearly, and they're like, But Bert Groom was a fireman, and he reportedly took it to his house and was building a home for it. I don't have any updates from there, so I know some Groom descendants are around, and we're hoping for updates.
Okay, folks.
On Keo. What happened to
Let's
Keo?
get in there.
And then the latest fire station mascot we know about is Metro, the fire cat, who was around in more recent years. My dad is a retired firefighter. I remember Metro. And my dad got me the whole story. He was literally on the phone with all his fireman buddies and getting me the lowdown on Metro's life story.
That's right.
So, but I'll keep it short. Metro belonged to a college student. So this was up at the Maple Street Fire Station, Station 3. It's now Billy Frank Jr. goes up, and then Maple is the cross street.
Oh!
So there's a fire station up there.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
near the college. So there was college students living in college house up there who had this cat whose name was, it was like John or something. I don't know what it said. But
Sounds right.
it was something else. And so the cat would come over, though, and hang out at the fire station. And they just have the big doors open all the time. So the cat's just made himself at home.
Cute.
Loves it. The firemen are like, we love this cat.
Yeah.
So apparently the college kids moved away, and the cat just came back and was like, nope, this is where I live. And then so arrangements were made for them to just keep it. So that was around 1989. And then we know Metro was best known for his ability to drink from the water fountain, or they had somehow rigged it up so that he could. There's lots of photos, as you can see, of Metro on the water fountain.
Yay.
And sadly, though, his 9 lives ended in 2007. And he had cancer, and the firemen had been, like, passing the hat and, like, driving this cat to Seattle for treatment. They really, extended his life as much as possible.
Yeah. And well loved.
As far as I know, that was the last fire station mascot. I'm not sure what their official policy is today on mascots, but, maybe they could get a hamster. Seems more manageable.
I like it, and we can get him a little tiny little fire hat.
Right? I can see it. Let's bring it back full circle.
I know. Oh, man. Well, you know what? We have talked for a very long time. Faithful listeners will know that we did a series of bird podcasts.
Yeah, listen to those if you want bird stories.
Yeah, go find them. We've got Mildred the parrot in there, and as many ostriches as you would like to have.
And the whole museum, their collection in 1940 when the museum formed was founded on taxidermy, largely birds.
Yeah.
They have a great
was the museum
collection, so if you haven't seen their birds, go look at the birds.
Yeah, upstairs.
And also if you like taxidermy, check out this event.
We've got this event coming up.
And if you're looking for a potential hobby and you're into sewing up dead critters, I guess, this is a great opportunity. Really, it sounds like an amazing opportunity.
No,
if that's your
it
jam.
sounds amazing. You may or may not hear an entire podcast on the subject because, if you hadn't guessed.
No, we got to do a taxidermy.
Near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
But we're so happy that you guys joined us tonight. But any of you guys have any questions, comments, things to say about animals?
Animal stories.
Animal stories in Bellingham. We would love to hear them.
There's so many more.
Oh, yeah, no,
it's impossible.
We had a really hard time cutting this down to an hour. We're nerds. We're very excited to tell you all about this. So if you have questions, we're super happy to hear them. We hope you enjoyed that first episode of our brand new season. We just have a few things we wanted to plug for those who are interested. First, tours. It's tour time. So if you find yourself in Bellingham or you have those out-of-town visitors, come and join us. We have tours on the calendar now. Dates are available for our Sin and Gin, Gore and Lore, cemetery tours, and more at bellinghistory.com.
Also coming up in May, we've got some fun things going on here in Bellingham. So right after our next episode comes out in mid-May, we'll be having a very maritime-themed weekend. We're doing a sea shanty sing-along at El Capitan's on Cornwall, Friday, May 17th.
Sea shanties are super fun to sing along with and stomp along with, and they're really easy to learn, the choruses. And so we've been doing this for a very, very long time with the Good Time Girls, and it was started by one of our former guides, Jane. And we have carried on the tradition in many many different ways and different spaces. And so we're really excited to go to El Capitan's and teach you guys about some maritime history, but then also just have a good old rootin' tootin' sea shanty time. It is one of my favorite events, and so we just keep on bringing it back. And it's going to be a part of that maritime weekend with the big Zodiac schooner. We're super stoked. Okay, so then on Saturday the 18th, we have the new maritime themed tour in downtown Bellingham called Shore Leave. That is Belling history served salty. So if you love shipwrecks, sea monsters, and all that fun stuff, check out our Shore Leave tour, brand new. There'll be a few more offered over the summer if you can't make that one, but only a few, so get in there. Again, that's bookable at bellinghistory.com.
And then to round out that same weekend, like we said, Sunday, May 19th, will be at the celebration for the schooner Zodiac, 100 years at sail.
Cool.
If you aren't familiar, the Zodiac is a 160-foot wooden tall ship who calls Bellingham her home port these days, and 100 years is a big deal for a wooden ship. So there will be a big celebration at the Bellingham Cruise Terminal at the foot of Harris Ave in Fairhaven, with an open house beginning at 11 a.m. You can join the party and get a tour of the ship. We'll be there providing some festive and nautical ambiance. Also, if you didn't know, the schooner Zodiac offers regular tours and trips out of Bellingham from March to October, which is another great activity and or reason to come to Bellingham if you aren't here already.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so excited. Don't forget, we're going to be back every third Thursday with new episodes for the new season. Next month in May, we'll be talking about taxidermy, and we're super stoked. That topic will tie in with some events at the Whatcom Museum that we're really excited about. The museum is going to host 2 events featuring Alice Markham and Paloma Strong of Prey Taxidermy. They're purveyors of museum taxidermy for education and conservation and offering taxidermy classes utilizing museum techniques. Pretty rad ladies. So Friday, May 30th, 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., the Whatcom Museum is hosting a viewing of Stuffed, a documentary about the art of taxidermy, followed by a Q&A with Alice Markham and Paloma Strong. We are going to be there, so come on down. Saturday, June 1st, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., there's also a taxidermy lab. We will be representing at that as well. So we'll post links in our show notes or see the Whatcom Museum's website at whatcommuseum.org.
Yeah, and that about wraps it up. That's a lot of stuff for you guys to go do.
That's it for our special little episode of Belling History with the Good Time Girls. We'll see y'all next time. And don't forget to check out Free Fridays at the museum.
Free.
Okay, over and out.
Over and out.
Over and out.
My brain. Help me.
Well, hey there, mama, where'd you go? You gotta reap just what you sow. That's too bad. Too bad. To that old time. The old man hits without bad weather. Put on the side, they were sewn together. That's too bad. To listen to that old time.
Thank you all for listening to Belling History with the Good Time Girls. You can check out our show notes for this episode and others at bellinghistory.com. If you find yourself in Bellingham, check out our Belling History tours. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
Oh, blue loves you red, blue loves you blue. Most of the time, blue just loves you blue. That's too bad. To listen to that old time music. I lost my hat, I lost my brim, I look like crows just swinging on a limb. That's too bad. To listen to that old time music.
As usual, we'd like to thank Devin Champlin and the late, great Lucas Hicks for the use of the Gallus Brothers song, Too Bad West Coast Blues. You can find the Gallus Brothers and Devin Champlin tunes on Bandcamp, and you can also find Devin Champlin down at Champlin Guitars in Bellingham.
Lost my hat, lost my brim, looking like a crow's nest swinging from a limb. That's too bad, too bad. Well, I got no bugging, I got no smokes. I look like Grandpap and all of his folks. That's too bad. To listen to that old time music.
Tune in next time for more Belling History.
Thank you. Thanks.